All right, Josh. Good afternoon.
Good
Thank
afternoon,
you.
David.
Yeah, thanks for having a conversation with me. Um, what I've been trying to do lately is have conversations with some up and coming folks or some folks that have been there, done that, and just for the fun of it, talking to them, talking, seeing what they're all about, seeing what they're up to, and kind of picking their brain as far as what how they're helping other people out and where their headspace is at in terms of their future goals and ideas as far as stuff they're working on. So you've always been a guy that whenever I run across you, you always have some sort of new, fresh idea. You always got your wheels working. Um, and things are spinning up in your head a little bit differently than most people I run across. And I wanted to pick your brain today because I contacted you because I knew you had something in the works, but I didn't know what it was. So I wanted to talk through that today. But before we jump into it, let's talk about where you're from, where you're raised, how you got to where you're currently at right now.
Of course, my pleasure, David. And first, I appreciate the time today. I saw the last interview you did, and it was excellent. I love the idea and happy to be a part of it.
Thanks,
And
man.
to answer your question, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm from a suburb pretty close to Atlanta called Marietta. Born there, great family, and I attended the University of Georgia, where I studied economics and international affairs with a minor in Spanish.
In
I moved to
economics and
Austin.
international affairs. That sounds
Yes, that's
heavy. Anyways,
I
you're
always
saying.
say I always say it was an interesting major since it had the number work of the economic side, the more speaking and writing side of the liberal arts, international affairs. So
Yeah,
it
dude.
gets together, it works both sides of the brain there.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so after college, what did that look like?
After college, I was like most college graduates. My parents were telling me to do things, my professors were. I knew personally I was really interested in sales and specifically technology sales. In technology sales, most entry level positions are what's known as sales development representatives.
Hmm.
So I applied to multiple different companies and I decided to go with the company that was renowned for its training, also renowned for its reputation. And since then, I've had some success there. And if nothing else, I've also learned a lot and I've had a lot of good relationships come from that opportunity.
Okay, so that sounds like pretty. I mean, if you're going to college, you got decent grades, and then you're being scouted by a couple larger corporations. Sounds like a pretty typical story for most college graduates with a decent GPA, right? Um, but it couldn't have been all sunshine and rainbows, right? I mean, like you took the job. I'm sure, like you said, there was good training there and all that fun stuff. But your brain has latched on to something here recently that I find really fascinating. So let's talk about that. What were some of the struggles and or difficulties you saw with yourself or your peers during that time when you were uh, walking through your first couple years at that company?
My pleasure, David. That's an interesting question, and I'm sure a lot of recent graduates can definitely sympathize with what I'm about to say. College does a great job of preparing you for the world. It teaches you a lot of information, but a lot of what it doesn't prepare you for is the actual struggles of the workforce. Specifically in sales, what I've learned through training and also through reading, there's really three things you have to sell prospects on, and it's essential you sell them as fast as possible. These are first, the importance and value of your company. Second, the importance and value of your product. And third, the importance and value of yourself as a professional. Now, it's interesting, but for myself, I'm only 24 years old, just out of college. And also, a lot of my peers, I've noticed that the selling yourself part is what's truly difficult. My training was excellent and I learned some about technology. I learned a lot of sales best practices, but when it actually came time to implement these and actually develop rapport with prospects, frequently I was calling people who were 30 years more experienced. They might have a Bentley or Maserati in their garage. They might have millions of dollars. And there I was just out of college and I was supposed to convince them that not only I was worth their time, I was worth their company's money.
Yeah, that I can't. That whole aspect of sales is interesting to me because I thought that when I was a young man in my 20s, that in order to build rapport, you had to have something in common with the folks you were talking to. And turns out I was right. It's not impossible, but it's one of those things where in sales, they want to know that you're a been there, done that professional. And now that I'm 38 years old and I have 20 something years of sales under my belt, I'm going, yeah, I got that trusted advisor sort of position or that professional who's been there, done that. it exists. And so I know that struggle is real. But one of the things that I was talking to you about last week was you want to try and break that stereotype. And I think it's a fantastic idea because I spent most of my 20s trying to break that stereotype of, hey, I know I'm young, but I also know that I am a professional and I can
Mhm.
help you regardless if I'm driving the same sports car as you or not, right?
Yeah.
Um, so so the struggle to find some common ground amongst folks that have been in the business profession for anywhere from 10 to 30 years, and you're
Hmm.
just coming fresh out of college into this role, and you are a professional. And then that's why I wanted to talk to you today. You are a
Hmm.
professional. You carry yourself like a professional. You think
Appreciate it.
about things that business professionals think about. Some people just view it as a job. I know for you, I can easily see that you view it as a career. So where did that lead you in your headspace, the things that you work on, say, let's say a side hustle or something like that? I know that led you somewhere. Where did that take you?
It's a great question, David. And there's one thing you said that really stood out: the trusted advisor. That's actually something I heard a lot in training, a lot of the books and podcasts I listened to. They kept saying trusted advisor. So actually, one night I was sitting there in my bed and I was thinking, trusted advisor? Why would anyone trust me? I thought, you know why? They don't trust me because I don't give them a reason to. Like you said, it truly is a situation where people have to understand that you do have value. And the best way to present that, in my mind, is to have others' opinions and others' recommendations that really give you what we call social proof. So it's funny, the idea actually didn't come from sales or even business in general. I was actually watching YouTube one day. I was watching some of the Paul brothers, watching some David Dobrik, and also I was very big on sports, and I saw something called the Players Tribune. Now, David, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. It was created by LeBron James and Derek Jeter, but the Players Tribune is essentially an outlet for athletes to share their side of the story. Typically, the media organizations, they paint a narrative for what athletes are, who they are as people, and what they do and how they provide value. Honestly, in sales, it's somewhat similar. In the business, the way it's set up, a lot of the older, more experienced people are the ones that are trusted, and the younger ones have to put in the work to get to that level. Now, what I noticed was that social media was changing this entire dynamic. I mentioned before some names like Logan Paul, David Dobrik, some other ones are Gary Vaynerchuk. These people are immensely successful, David. They've had vast networks they've created, they share content, and they really have a large grasp
Yeah.
on what people need, and they're able to provide that. So I can dig in some more on exactly where I'm going with this. The ultimate picture, though, is I want to empower young sales representatives. My vision is to completely change the dynamic. Instead of viewing young sales representatives as simply the first step in getting to the ultimate goal of having experience, I think young sales representatives actually have a lot of value to present, even though they're young. So,
Yeah.
what I'm doing is creating a social media strategy that capitalizes on this, and it really emphasizes the unique individuality and the unique perspective everyone has to share.
Well, see, Josh, and that's exactly it, man. Like you, you surprised me the other day because you're like, "Hey, Dave, can I quote you on something you said?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And you're like, "In my book," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And that's the thing, man. And that's why I wanted to talk to you is because you're one. It's very flattering. I appreciate that anybody would ever want to quote me. And two, like these are the type of people. Again, ever since I was really young, even in high school, I always tried to attach myself to folks that were not talking about doing something, but that were actually doing something. They were taking
Mhm. Of
action, not just talking about taking action.
course.
And you approached me and you said, "Hey, can I quote you?" And I said, "For this ebook that I'm writing." And I was like, "Yeah, dude." And now I'm curious. So I saved all my questions for this conversation. Like, what is this ebook? What is it all about? Why are you trying to write it? I think you've kind of already alluded to it a little bit already, but what was your inspiration and your thought process behind it, and what are you hoping to do with it going forward?
It's a great question. And first, I appreciate the kind words. And when I did have this realization that there should and there has to be a way to optimize who you are as a person and the value you can bring, I looked to the market. I saw if there's any books, any podcasts, really any material that referenced how to do this in a successful manner. What I found, David, was that most people that preached how to be successful here were honestly people who were successful before social media was really a thing. These were people who are older than
Yeah.
myself typically. They're people who were successful before with a following. I really couldn't relate to them, and I couldn't find anyone that actually had the tools to develop someone from a recent college grad into a sales professional, and even more so to a professional in general. So I decided that no one better than myself, I might as well take the chance and go about creating that blueprint. And I developed what I like to call blue chip sales, which is my business, my brand, but even more so, it's the way I would like to present content and value to all aspiring sales representatives in the market.
That's got a nice ring to it, man. When you sent over the document so I could take a peek at it, the privileged information we're not going to share here, um, I looked at your outline in Blue Chip Sales and I was like, what a great name. Like a name has so much to do with, I don't want to say the only thing or the majority of the thing that decides whether a company succeeds or fails, but a good name is an amazing first start. So really great name. Is that going to be the name in theory? Because I know you're not finished yet, but in theory, is that going to be the name of the book? Or is
Yes,
that
that
the
will
name of
be
your
the,
LLC?
of course. So it's the name of both. My
Okay.
LLC is Blue Chip Sales. It's
Okay.
registered in Texas. I'm
Cool.
also working on a website currently, bluechipselling.com. And the book will be Blue Chip Sales. Then it would also have a subtitle, but that's to be determined later,
Sure.
of course.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
Yeah. So with this company,
yeah.
this for now, for at the moment, side hustle, right? Because I know you're employed and you're knocking it out where you're at. Um, you're going to take your experience and who are you going to help? You said it already, but I mean, inexperienced professionals. Is this like pre first job, or is this experienced sales professional, or everywhere in between?
That's a great question. I'd say it's a mix of a few things. The first market that I really want to target is a market that I feel has been underserved by the sales community and often by the community at large in the professional world, which is current college students and recent college graduates. I don't want to share too much of the story to paint a bad light about anyone, but there's actually a time in college when I had a thesis advisor, and she was a good source for me for knowledge and information on the world. And when she asked me what I wanted to do out of college, I said sales, and she highly recommended against it. She said it was very risky, and she recommended I go to a more traditional path like banking or consulting.
Sure.
Obviously, I didn't take her advice, and I think it was the best move I ever made. So that's the first market that I think is really underserviced. And if I could do anything to provide value and truly paint a light on how to be successful in sales, that would be a mission accomplished. Now, the second segment is people who just have started a career in sales. As I mentioned, typically these are what we call sales development representatives, but also account executives, account managers, or anyone of the like. These are people who are just starting their sales journey. They're trying to figure out how to be successful, but oftentimes they have the natural ability, maybe not. They also have the determination and the grit, but they don't have the tools and knowledge that they can leverage to truly be successful. So really it's those two parts. First, the college students, the students that are interested in entering the job field, and then second, the people who are there, the people who need help now and who really are interested in developing their brand and their personal and professional expertise for the future.
That's awesome, man. That's actually really inspiring. At 38 years old, I'm still looking at different avenues and different ways to help and teach and encourage people. And you're starting off what seems to me to be really young, taking a hard look at how you can inspire and teach people. And I think that's fantastic. Is the ultimate goal here um, different clientele, like to build this up to a clientele base, or is the ultimate goal to distribute more books or teach and train and equip? Like what's the ultimate goal? Let's go 5-year goal first
Mhm.
of what you want this to look like.
It's a great question. I'm going to share a quote that I actually have on my LinkedIn, one of my favorite quotes by Albert Einstein.
Hmm.
The quote is, "Don't ever try to be successful, try to provide value." So in my
There you
life,
go.
what my
That's
parents
good.
have always ingrained in me, it's important to have a vision, to know where you would like to go ideally, but you can never be set in stone. Overall, the main focus should always be on providing value and always making sure that you're productive. And truly, the money, the clients, all of that will come. So, my 5-year goal, it's really not too concrete. I know my 5-year goal is that I want to provide value, I want to empower young reps. And I think the best way to do this is by providing knowledge through ebooks, through content, and really through an overall brand. I truly want blue chip sales in my company, my idea. I want it to be more than just me. I want it to be the entire community of sales representatives where new and aspiring individuals can share ideas, best practices, And honestly, my hope, David, is that in 5 years, when a recent college graduate like myself, just a couple of years back, when they enter sales, they don't have to do it alone. They truly have the guidance of others, and they actually have the expertise of others that is proven successful and that can help them in their own career.
Yeah, man, and I think you're really onto something here because I know there's a few larger corporations and even some smaller ones that have training programs, and then occasionally the folks that enter into the workforce, they'll get a good manager, and the manager will guide them and lead them through the appropriate steps they need to be successful. But by and large, I run into quite a few sales professionals in all kinds of different industries around the Austin metroplex or Austin citywide area here that they struggle with. They're
Mhm.
like, My manager is cool, but maybe not the best at mentoring, or my manager is supportive, but maybe hasn't taught them everything they need to know. And the majority of the folks out there feel like they're floundering, in my opinion,
Mhm.
because they come to me and say, Dave, you got to help me out. What do I need to do to be successful? And I really think you're onto something, man, because especially in your age bracket, and you're not too far removed from it, it's
Mhm.
one thing for me to say, hey, 20 years ago, I dealt with that too. Don't worry about it. But it's another thing
Mhm.
for you to be like, hey, 3 years ago, I dealt with this, and here's how I survived. Because, like you said, the landscape has changed.
Of course.
Social media is a whole different game to play, and leveraging social media, no matter what type of social media it is. You said ebook, which cracked me up because at 38, I was thinking you said ebook, and I don't know why it hit me so funny because I'm like, no, it's just book, right? And you're like, no, ebook. And I'm like, yeah. So then we get into all the other like listening devices that people could
Mhm.
get into, whether it be streaming the book that's read by somebody else, or whether it be a podcast or YouTube video, something like that. Man, it's like the possibilities of where you distribute your information to are endless. And so, yeah, again, man, I'm super proud of you for taking a stab at this and trying to get some stuff going. And just like many people that set out on their first venture, it may not be perfect the first time, but what I've always known about you is you're like, hey, Dave, I got this idea. And then
Mhm.
you said this, and then you're like, oh, hey, and you even given me advice. You're like, hey, Dave, next time you do that, you should try this. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's awesome, right? So I always appreciate the encouragement from you, and I really appreciate where your headspace is at because you're always thinking. And that sounds so bad. It's not like everybody else isn't thinking, but I noticed that you have your finger on the pulse of some new ideas pretty often. So I'm looking forward to what you come up with here in the next couple months because I know you're on a pretty fast track timeline to get some of the stuff you're working on done. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing some good stuff from you.
Appreciate
Anything?
it. And David, quickly sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
You said that the landscape is changing, and I'll share a quick anecdote that I think is really effective. Are you familiar with Malcolm Gladwell, the writer?
Oh, absolutely.
Malcolm Gladwell is one of my favorite writers. I heard him on a podcast recently talking about his most recent book he released. Malcolm Gladwell, probably the most successful writer in the world, or one of the most successful. His most recent book was far more well received on audiobook than it was in the actual book. More people actually bought the audiobook than the book. Don't even let me start with TikTok, with YouTube, fine, whatever it is now musically. Even I feel old sometimes looking at all of that, David. But what I'm noticing is that the world is changing. The business and sales world is adapting, but it's adapting slowly. Now, the older generations, they're definitely helping in the adaptation. But I think my generation, we were born in the technology age. I was born with social media. I started with Facebook back in elementary, middle school. We truly grew up in the age of social media, and I think there's no one better to change and revolutionize the sales career than truly us.
Yeah, I agree with you. And this is the thing, your generation needs somebody from your generation, right?
Of
Your
course.
generation needs somebody in that 20 something age bracket to give them the tools they need because there are some really phenomenal, and I mean absolutely phenomenal business coaches and leaders out there that they struggled for 20 years trying to get their name out there, and now they're succeeding in their late 30s and 40s, which is again fantastic. They're putting out brilliant stuff, but to have somebody up and coming who's taking a stab at not just making a name for themselves, but hey, let me bring a couple thousand other people
Mhm.
along my journey with me instead of trying to strike out on their own for 10 years and then finally make it like hey, let's do this together.
Of
And
course.
that seems to be where your headspace is at, and that's why I wanted to talk to you again. I mean, it is good, it's phenomenal that you're um, taking this leap and doing something that's both informational, educational, helpful to whoever might need that sort of help. Because of my knowledge, 1 out of every 1,000 gets it, and the
Mhm.
rest of us, we needed a little help and a little boost to help us on our way. So I appreciate it, man.
My pleasure. And I
Yeah.
do want to preface, though, this is not a journey I'm taking alone.
Yeah.
I actually have another partner that I'm working with. I'll give him a quick shout out, Nordine Chalkman, a
Mhm.
great colleague, and he's actually helping me turn my vision into a reality. David, we mentioned this briefly last week, but I think it's important to mention on this outlet. I think it's truly important to know in life what your strengths are and what your weakness is. And I always think it's important to focus on your strengths and hire people to help with the weaknesses. Now, I'm
I
sure
love
if you're not good at something, a lot of people want to get better at that. I think it's more important to focus on what you're good at. For me, I happen to be good at speaking and writing and engaging people. I'm not really good with a lot of the technology aspects, the website design, a lot of the editing and publishing the book. I
Yeah.
don't know how to do that. I don't know if you do, but I don't know. They didn't teach me in school. They didn't teach me in training. So what I've done is I've really put together a team across the country and across the world. And nowadays you could really do this with different sites like Upwork, Fiverr. It's truly a limitless spectrum for how you can get people to help you. And if you're able to tap into that, I think the possibilities are endless.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of things to say about it, what you just brought up. One, the whole publishing a book thing. I have a 10-year-old who is absolutely dynamite at writing.
Hmm.
She's also a good salesperson too. I think you might have seen the LinkedIn post that I put up about her and her Girl Scout cookie sales. She
Of
just
course.
blew it out of the water. But she's also a talented writer, and we're trying to get her published. Her first book is called Bella Fur and Gum, and she's brilliant because Bella is the name of our dog, and she wrote
Hmm.
a whole story around Bella Fur, which has now become Bella Fur, and gum, like my dog's hair getting caught in gum, and she writes this whole story about these two friends that meet each other, the fur and the gum, and then they're stuck together for this journey, which is hilarious. And trying to figure out how to publish this book is it's a little bit of a task. So yeah, you
Hmm.
definitely need help with from other people to like you said, tighten up your weaknesses. Like for instance, I haven't done my taxes
Hmm.
in I think over 14 years, and what I mean is they've been done, just not by me, right? So
Of
I,
course.
I definitely hire a CPA, and some people are looking at me like, Dave, you could do that yourself. It's really simple, and I'm going, yeah, but it would take me 5 times longer to do it than it would me paying a tax professional. So I've
Of
always
course.
paid to have my taxes done, even when my taxes only reported one income and that was it. I was just like, I'll pay somebody and just get it done. So yeah, strengthening up those areas where you might be have some knowledge gaps is
Hmm.
definitely a plus when it comes to business. The other thing is, did you tell Nordine you were talking to me today?
I did. I did.
Okay,
As
good.
my partner here, I made sure to mention to him. I wanted to make sure to give him the proper shout out, since truly he is a great partner in this endeavor. And honestly, they say that no one man is an army. No one man can accomplish anything alone. And I think that's true. I think in any endeavor you do in life, if you don't have a strong team behind you, a strong bench, a strong coach, it's really tough to be successful.
I think the next conversation I'm going to have is probably going to be with him. Maybe one or two conversations from now. I got to get Nordine on here because Nordine's my boy, man. I love picking his brain too. I'm actually really happy to know that you guys are kind of hashing things out together and trying to get stuff going. 'Cause he's a good guy.
Of
But
course.
anyways, man, that's all for today, as they say. Wanted to just pick your brain real quick and give people some insight into where you're at and what you're doing. Because again, every time I talk with you, man, you seem like you got your wheels turning up there, trying to do something that could be potentially groundbreaking. I don't
Hmm.
want to, puff you up too much and say that you've arrived, but you're definitely trying just a smidge harder than everybody else that I run into. So I appreciate it, man. Uh,
Well, thank you, David, and really I appreciate this platform as well. We discussed this earlier, but I think what you're doing is great. As I mentioned, if you're able to provide value, I think that's the best way to develop a following, to develop success. And I put my hat off to you and also your daughter. I really look forward to reading her book in the future.
all right, man. Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great, David.